turned to see the windows blown out of Josh's condo on the 20th floor. The vibration from the explosion triggered an incongruous chorus of car alarms from the parking garage and vehicles parked on the street. I dropped a grocery bag and ran toward the building as the doorman backed away from his post, his attention fixed upward toward the source of the explosion. He didn't bother to stop me as I slipped inside past a group of panicked residents hurrying out of the building. Inside the lobby, more anxious residents emerged from the elevators to be directed toward the exit by a uniformed concierge. "Please exit the building in a calm, orderly fashion," he pleaded in a strained voice. Not trusting the building's power, I entered the stairwell and ran up to the 20th floor. I emerged from the stairwell to find my brother, apparently unharmed, outside his door, partially surrounded by his frightened neighbors. "I left the gas stove on." He smiled, the full measure of his considerable charm on display as he soothed their anxiety with a deep, humble sincerity. "My bad," he pleaded, splaying a hand over his heart. Concerned for Skye, I roughly pushed through the neighbors and past Josh without a second glance. Relief washed over me when I found her safe, sitting upright on the dark gray couch. She appeared shocked, staring at a dozen small cuts on the backs of her hands. I rushed to her, kneeling as I took her hands into mine. "Are you okay?" I asked, examining her. She nodded. Gently turning her wrists, I saw more cuts on the back of her forearms. Judging by the location of the cuts, I assumed that she'd been able to cover her face with her hands just before the explosion occurred. In her shock, she seemed to have forgotten her animosity toward me. "I think I blew up your condo," she said, her expression blank. I stifled a relieved chuckle as I examined the damage to the unit. The large dark area rug that covered the hardwood floors was littered with bits of glass, most prominently beneath the blown-out windows. Not a single one remained, and a cold wind blew into the unit. The couches had been moved slightly, pushed outward from the large cocktail ottoman nearby, the obvious epicenter of the explosion. I didn't need to see the magical components sitting on top of the ottoman to know what had happened. "Are you the resident, sir?" inquired an authoritative female voice at the door. The police officer's radio squawked. "I'm at the unit now," she answered. "Emergency services, stand by." Skye glanced nervously at the components as I casually scooped them into one of the ottoman's compartments, shielding the police officer's view with my body. I cleared my throat, letting Josh know it was safe to let the officers inside, then rose and turned to meet them. There were two. They always came in pairs, and they weren't ours. An anxious-looking building manager followed them. "Ma'am," the lead officer addressed Skye, glancing with concern at the cuts on her hands and arms, "do you require medical assistance?" "I'm fine." She rose, gathering herself. "Just some minor cuts. I'll have my doctor take a look, but I'm fine." She added nervously, "It was just a gas leak." I glared at Josh. This wasn't the first incident. Over the last few months, my brother had grown unusually reckless, pushing the envelope of his powers, and not just with Skye. There were safer places to test his magic. The retreat, for example. I was beginning to suspect that he wanted to draw attention to himself. Perhaps he was testing the limits of what he could get away with. As I watched him now, confronted by two police officers, the manager, and a host of unhappy neighbors, he appeared to be in his element, charming all of them to forget everything and walk away. Only not everyone was buying his story this time. Not completely. The scowling manager strode into the kitchen to check for more damage while the other officer, with both hands gripping his black belt, walked up to the broken windows, mindful of the glass he was stepping on, to look out. I glanced at Skye, who looked miserable, as if she'd failed an important test, and felt my jaw clench. My anger stewed another 15 minutes until Josh finally ushered everyone out of the unit, closed the door, and turned to me with a triumphant grin, his arms held out wide as if embracing our supposed awe. As usual, he wore faded jeans and a short-sleeved graphic t-shirt, drawing attention to the tattoos that covered both of his arms. His golden-brown hair was a chaotic mess, and the shadowy stubble of his beard never seemed to grow or fade. We were as far from each other in appearance as we were in temperament.